I know, I see, I hear. Do you understand the cost in years, in tears, the weight of the debt?
Hey, Screaming Geek Media here. I'm Jerry the Geek. Today we're going to talk about 3D. Before we do, please, if you like physical media, if you like home theater, movies in general, 4K, Blu-ray, DVD, check out my other videos here on my channel. I do I do the reviews, discussions, and little odds and ends. Check those out. Like and subscribe, and turn your bell notifications on. So, I wanted to talk about 3D. After seeing Avatar: The Way of Water this past week on IMAX 3D, it kind of inspired me to talk about it. But instead of doing a review on what I like or dislike about 3D, it was going to be a simple video, but I thought, well, why not talk about, the entirety, some history of 3D and, how it's come and went over the years. So, I did some research and thought I would share some stuff with you. Not, like I said, not only my thoughts, but, some history. I'm not going to go into a lot of technical detail or everything, because reading through the history on Wikipedia, man, my freaking eyes started glazing over after there was so much info. So I'm going to just hit some highlights through early history, and then I'll have some details on some glasses and stuff later on as we come through it. But yeah, I didn't realize 3D has been around for that long. I mean, actually, late 1800s is actually when they started developing it. Here I have that in the 1890s, a British film pioneer by the name of William Freeze Green, he actually filed a patent for the 3D film process. And his patent, he had two films were projected side by side on a screen. The viewer looked through this big stereoscopic device, and it converged the two images. But because of these huge machines, behind the method, the theatrical use was it wasn't practical. And then just over time, they still played around with different engineers, developers. They came up with their own little things. They made some shorts here and there. In 1915, a couple of guys did some tests to an audience in New York, and again, it just never caught on. It was a big, cumbersome ordeal that it was just hard to bring to the masses. Now, as far as because a lot of these makers were doing little short films just for the 3D. Back then it was just all about they wanted to give you the depth perception. That's what they were shooting for 3D. And 1922 was when the first feature film came out in 3D. That was Nat Deverich's Power of Love. I mean, it was a silent 3D movie, and it was shown using two projectors. And audience would view the movie wearing the standard red and green 3D glasses, and they had a choice of alternate endings. Now, the way to do this was, at the ending, one was happy, one was tragic. All they had to do was cover one of the lens to view the appropriate ending. And of course, it would be in 2D, but that's how it was done. And the 3D version, was with both. You'd see the different ending. And apparently, the 3D version of the movie is presumed lost and never been seen. Again, never caught on. It wasn't until the 1950s. Again, I didn't write down all the different names. I'll leave links below. You can check out if you want to read more stories, more in-depth stuff about. But the 50s were a big resurgence, the golden era of 3D, apparently. A lot of different studios are putting out different things, experimenting with. Here's a shot of it's an audience wearing the glasses, and it was called Telekinema on the South Bank in London during a film festival in 1951. And again, the craze lasted only a few years, and it just started declining because the same issues, cumbersome the way they had to project on 2 films at once, and they just didn't get the viewership, so it just kind of died out again. Then in 1973, I think it was Andy Warhol and someone else, they brought out a movie called Flesh for Frankenstein in 3D. And they were trying to resurrect the 3D format. And again, it didn't pan out and didn't last. It wasn't until the 80s which the gimmick of 3D really came out. And 1981 was like a weird, like American Spanish Western movie called Coming At You. And it was mainly geared toward the gimmick of 3D. And it's all about, instead of the depth perception, they wanted things to like jump off the screen and come right at you. And I think that's what I remember, because I grew up with those 80s movies. And I love the thought of seeing things coming at you. It was pretty cool. Sitting in the theater, it was pretty neat. And then we had movies like Friday 13th Part 3. I saw that at the theater. That was pretty cool. I loved it. Jaws 3D, Amityville 3D. All those, the 3D gimmick at the time was, like I said, wasn't the depth perception, but it was more about throwing things off the screen in your face. And that was pretty cool. I really liked that. Again, as usual, it was a short-lived deal. 3D movies just kind of went by the wayside again. It wasn't until the 2000s that James Cameron brought it back to the forefront when he did Ghost of the Abyss. It was a documentary he did in 3D. And other studios and started jumping in, doing some animated 3D movies. Monster House came out in Columbia Pictures. I saw it at the theater. I loved it. It was a pretty cool movie. And I still remember being, having those objects, even though it wasn't real, it was animated. It coming right at you on the screen. It was really cool. And it just struggled along. And still, and since then, Avatar, when it came out in 2009, it really brought 3D back in the forefront again. And studios were clamoring to put stuff in 3D. And then as far as glasses go, we got the old original traditional 3D glasses you see here with them red and cyan color filters. Basically, it's very similar to the red-green and red-blue lenses used in the early anaglyph films. And here you kind of see the technology behind the anaglyph colored filtered. And basically, it shows here the glasses were, the displays 2 images on the screen, typically one in red, the other in blue. The glasses are used as a subtractive filter and allow only one image to enter each eye. And images are combined in the brain to appear as one single image with simulated depth. And here we can see they come out with polarized glasses from the 80s. It's similar to the ones in the 50s. There were some plain white, and they often had the name of the theater or graphics from the film on them. And here with polarized 3D, the lenses improve on that original red-blue technology since they allow for color images. This 3D method works by displaying 2 separate and orthogonally, I hate these fucking technical terms, but polarized images on the screen. The users wear glasses where the polarization of each lens is orthogonal to the other as well. I'm glad I'm reading this because some of the times some of the shit I don't understand anyways. As a result, this method acts as another type of a filter where the 2 images are combined in the brain as a single image with a simulated depth. And here we have what, resembling sunglasses, the real 3D circular polarized glasses are pretty much a standard for theatrical releases and theme park attractions. And here we have what they have now is the active shutter 3D, which is basically their LCD shutter glasses. This one, this particular pair used for expandee 3D films. Of course, the big thick frames conceal the electronics and batteries that use because it uses powered glasses to simulate stereoscopic effect. These glasses allow for uncompromised video quality in both color and bandwidth. This means that 3D video can now be displayed in full high-def quality with the right equipment. Now for the TVs, there's two styles of active shutter formats. One's called sequential and the other one's side-by-side. Here you have the sequential 3D, and which is driven by the Blu-ray 3D specifications, and allows true 1080p 3D images for each eye. What this means that the video must now be transmitted at 48 frames per second, 24 for each eye, to maintain high-def quality. So it's Blu-ray discs are hardly lacking for potential data storage. This massive bandwidth is not a problem. Now here we have a side-by-side 3D, and this 3D format was pushed by DirecTV as a means to enable 3D broadcast to be sent over existing equipment. Which, for the consumer, that's a pretty big deal. It's like you don't have to buy new equipment to experience 3D, just some glasses. However, for this to work, some signal manipulation was necessary to work with the existing bandwidth limitations. So due to the upscaling, the side-by-side 3D is not as sharp as sequential. Now, as far as going to the theaters, when you go see a movie, make sure you get the right glasses, because there's different ones out there. My experience last weekend with Avatar, when I first went into the theater and went up, I scanned my ticket, and that's a 3D film, so they gave me a pair of 3D glasses. So I walk down the aisle and get down to the auditorium, the IMAX auditorium, and as they get ready to start letting us in, they bring out a rack of 3D glasses, and I was like, I already got a pair, and he's like, those aren't the right ones. And they gave me this, so the IMAX 3D I don't know if it's because of the IMAX, or if it's potential different because of James Cameron, because we all know James Cameron is he pushes the envelope for when it comes to technology, and he wants these to see, he's really pushing for the 3D formats. And he wants his movies to be seen in 3D. So I don't know if it's him that these are different, or if it's just the IMAX 3D that the glasses were different than the ones they originally gave me. Now going back to TV, in the research, I've seen that there was quite a few the networks actually produced some 3D channels. But in hindsight, it just didn't last a long time. I'm not sure if any of them are actually still active today. If they are, that's very limited. And plus you have the health effects from 3D. Some viewers, including myself, it's a lot of eye strain, so sometimes I can, get headaches, after watching 3D. I've seen a lot of that after, and other people in the studies, people complained of motion sickness, and which is, become induced by 3D presentations. One published study shows that of those who watch 3D films, nearly 55% experience varying levels of headaches, nausea, and disorientation. It's unnatural for the human vision, the cross-talk between the eyes, imperfect image separation. So I would go in that group because it does, for me, I'm not a fan of it. Are 3D TVs still being made? Yes or no? Of course, I'm not sure how old this info is on Wikipedia. Could be months, could be years. But it states that, at the time of this info was put on, it says the 3D projectors were still being continued to be made. Latest ones with 4K and HDR, and some 4K 3D Blu-ray players were being made, as well as Blu-ray 3D movies continue to be made. But no, as far as flat panel TVs, as far as I know, there's no manufacturer still backing the formats. They've abandoned support of 3D altogether. Of course, another thing, a downside of the 3D at home is screen size. You have to have a massive TV screen and be getting and sit close to it to get any type of 3D effect. I mean, you know, a movie theater is different. You're sitting in with a large ass screen, 40, 50 feet wide, and then all of a sudden you're trying to watch it at home on even a 65 inch, which is a decent sized TV. You want to be sitting pretty close. I mean, otherwise you're not going to get the 3D effect. And again, a good friend of mine, years ago, I think he had a 70 or 75 inch, and he got into the whole 3D thing. And he had, I want to say it was Captain America, the first Avenger, on 3D. And it was sampling, and yes, it was very impressive. But again, overall, it just takes away from the film experience. I guess nostalgic side of me. You know, I want to see that film-like experience, and a 3D visual just kind of takes away from it, in my opinion. So I've never bought into 3D at home. I'm just like, that's that extra. I'm glad because of the money that you spend on the extra 3D TV and all the extra, you know, the components that need to be compatible. That's a lot of extra money for something that the manufacturers aren't supporting anymore. So I'm glad I didn't go down that route, and plus I don't like it anyway. So yeah, there's that. So to sum up, I mean, it's nice to know, see some little bit odds and ends, a little bit of history, some knowledge with 3D, how it's going. Even though how much, I mean, Cameron spent, I think it said $18 million to convert Titanic to 3D for its theatrical re-release recently. I forget how long it took to do it. That's how much he wants 3D to succeed. Again, I'm not a fan of 3D. I love the original type. I wouldn't say the original, but I love the 80s type. With things coming off the screen at you, and it can scare people. And also that's a 3D they use at amusement park attractions. Different film 4D theaters or 3D screenings. There's Universal's Islands of Adventure in Orlando, Florida. They had they still have it. It's called the Amazing Spider-Man attraction. They recently updated. I haven't seen it since they updated, but I saw the original attraction, and it was 3D. The ride moving around, things coming off, looked like it was jumping on a car in front of you. It was freaking awesome. I loved it. But as far as watching today's 3D movies at the theater, I just don't get it. I know a lot of you out there probably love it. But for me, I feel it's a distraction. It feels unnatural. Especially with today's video technology, the high def 4K. The video presentations are remarkable. The picture already gives you some, depth perception without having 3D. And plus, in my opinion, I think the glasses take away some of the details and colors, in my opinion. At least with my experience with Avatar 2, I was watching a lot of the movie without the glasses because the glasses making it distracting. And I didn't like it, so I'd take the glasses off for a while. And even though without the glasses, you have the out of focus stuff on the screen. But man, the stuff that was in focus, the colors were so freaking rich. The vivid, the colors leapt off the screen. Yeah, I was very as much as I love Avatar 2, I was disappointed with the IMAX 3D presentation. I wanted to see it in Dolby Cinema, but when I bought the tickets, there was no good seats available, so IMAX 3D was my second choice. But I don't think I'm going to go back and see another 3D movie again. I mean, even the first Avatar we saw in 3D IMAX, I remember loving it, but I know again, I thought it was a little distracting. Alice in Wonderland we saw in 3D, but I don't remember much about it because the movie sucked and I slept through most of it. My wife loved it. But I'm not going to go see another 3D movie. I think I'm done with 3D. I'm hoping there's not a whole lot of movies coming out next couple weeks. I'm hoping that I want to get my wife back to see Avatar 2. So Hopefully it's going to be a Dolby Cinema in a couple weeks. Because I love Dolby Cinema. It kicks ass. I'll take it over IMAX, honestly. Even though IMAX is a bigger screen. So yeah, that's pretty much my, like I said, I want to talk about my thoughts on the 3D and my experiences. Also do a little history and talk about everything in a whole. So please I know a lot of you out there probably, I've seen comments from people on YouTube channels talk about how they love 3D Blu-ray, and I'm glad some of you out there do. But please comment below. Tell me what you think of seeing movies on 3D at home or in a theater. And again, check out my other videos on my channel. Like and subscribe and turn your bell notifications on. I like doing these reviews and discussions. And we'll see you soon. Geek out.